Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. This is the post-game pod from the Wolves' loss to the Spurs on Saturday. We'll talk about what went wrong here on, frankly, what was a schedule loss, the second night of a back-to-back less than 24 hours later. But still, there's some worrying trends here early in the season. We'll break that all down on the show here today. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by FanDuel. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully you had a fantastic weekend. The Wolves, of course, split a pair of games, winning Friday night over Denver in a really, really fun game. I did host the live postcast on Friday. So there's a show, actually the show before this in the feed was a happier show. Myself and Jack Borman immediately following the win over the Nuggets. We did a live postcast. You can check that audio out. This one is more about Saturday's game because I did that whole show Friday about Friday's game. So the Wolves, of course, lose to San Antonio Saturday. We're going to break down what happened in that game and a few rotation tweaks for Chris Finch, really only a couple, and a few other takeaways from that Spurs game and what to look ahead, what to look for. The Wolves play Charlotte tonight, so a chance pretty quickly here to get right for the Wolves. Anyway, all that's upcoming on the show. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. Of course, you can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch on YouTube and on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A quick reminder about the new newsletter as well. We saw a good number of subscribers the last couple weeks here. I think we kicked it off about 2 weeks ago, but go check that out. You can subscribe on lockedondaily.com and you'll get a daily newsletter from myself. Basically some, key points from the show if you're not able to listen to the show that day. Also some additional national content from a couple of very talented writers. So be sure to check that out. Again, subscribe at lockedondaily.com to get the daily email newsletter. All right. So Wolves Spurs on Saturday. Now let's get the schedule thing out of the way real quick. So the Timberwolves played Friday night. It was a late ESPN tip, so 8:30 p.m. at Target Center. And then they traveled on I-35 for a 7 p.m. tip on Saturday. They didn't get out of the arena until after midnight on Friday night, well after midnight. And, that I'm assuming they landed in San Antonio like around, the 2 to 3 a.m. range and then play, what would that be, like 16 hours later? It happens. I get it. They fly a charter plane. Yes, they're pro basketball players. They make a lot of money. They do, et cetera. But still, the first back-to-back too that the Wolves have had this season. And credit Chris Finch and Tim Conley, the organization. They don't rest guys like some other teams do. And they didn't rest anybody. I mean, Joe Ingles is the only guy that didn't play on Saturday that had been playing, and he only played like 5 minutes on Friday. So that's not resting. That was just a tweak to the rotation. I thought for sure we were going to see 10 guys play on Saturday for the first time, but instead we just saw Josh Minot play instead of Ingles, and we'll get into that. So this was a really what you could call a schedule loss against a team that's young, athletic, mostly plays big as well. And the Spurs are good this year, right? Like they're a talented team, good-ish, right? Like they're probably in the mix for the play-in. So this was always going to be a difficult game. I said as much when Jack and I were talking on Friday on the live postcast, I was a little worried about the matchup because the Spurs had coming in were 2-3, but they'd had a couple close losses. The teams that they lost to were good teams. Jack, we both kind of thought it could be a challenging game. We both thought they would win. We both predicted that on the Wednesday basketball party that they would win the game Saturday, but clearly fatigue was an issue, and then the defense continues to be a problem against a Spurs team that, shouldn't be that efficient offensively. It shouldn't be as efficient offensively as they were against the Wolves, and we'll get into that a bit too. But I wanted to mention the schedule stuff off the top because we can't ignore the reality of this really being a schedule loss. Let's actually get into the defense, and then what I want to do is I want to spend some time focusing on that, and then I'll hit some quick thoughts from this game, and we'll close with individual studs and duds. The defense overall, not good. we're now in not good territory, from like, a little bit lazy in the Lakers loss to spotty in the Kings loss to mostly good but still spotty at times in the Kings win, mostly spotty but legitimately good at times, with some bad moments in the win over the Raptors. And now this was just poor, and like, small sample size theater. Yes, I talked a lot about that on Friday. Like, sitting here right now, the Wolves are a bottom third defensive team. Like, on Basketball Reference, their defensive rating's 19th. I think they're actually a little bit lower on cleaning the glass, which I generally prefer to use. I've just got Basketball Reference here to quickly pull some stats, but it has not been good. And like, you look at what the Spurs did overall in this game. Like, the Spurs aren't a great shooting team. They don't have a ton of guys that are going to knock down threes, outside of Harrison Barnes. Like, there's nobody that really scares you. Chris Paul. But they were only 31% on threes. Like, this was yet another game where the Wolves, did an okay job guarding the 3-point line. Now, the Wolves' 3-point attempts were down and their makes were down. The Wolves were under 30% from three. And really, like, you could point to that as being the biggest difference in this game. Like, free throws were fairly even. Rebounding was an issue. We'll talk about that. But the 3-point shooting for the Wolves, being as bad as it was a major issue. The biggest problem, though, was, once again, paint defense. And I thought it was interesting at the halftime interview that FanDuel Sports Network does with Timberwolves assistant coach. This time it was Chris Hines, and he was very blunt. He said, we've got to have better paint defense, and Rudy's got to be better. Now, at the end of the day, the Wolves were only a -6 points in the paint. They lost by 10, but they gave up 52 points in the paint to the San Antonio Spurs. And yeah, I know they have Wemby. I get it. But Wemby only had 17 points in this game. Wemby only got 15 shots off. We're talking about, Keldon Johnson made 3 threes, but he made 7 twos in this game. He was 7 of 9 on 2-point attempts. The Spurs had 7 offensive rebounds, which isn't a crazy number, but it felt like they all came at, it usually does feel this way, all came at really inopportune times. The paint defense was just not good. And part of it was transition again. They were still not good in transition, but I actually thought it was a little bit better overall in this game. In fact, the Spurs actually only had 2 fast break points, according to the box score. So the transition defense was generally a little bit better against a team that really, with Chris Paul, they're maybe going to run a little bit less now, but a team that, young, athletic, could kill you in transition. It was the half-court defense and a little bit contained on the perimeter. There was a game, I can't remember which game it was now, earlier in the week. It might have been the Tuesday loss that they had to the Mavericks, where I felt like the perimeter defense, well, I guess it was, yeah, because the perimeter defense was not good except for the fourth quarter of that game against Dallas. But the interior defense was okay. And I thought Rudy made his presence felt. That was not the case in this game. Rudy was not very good. Overall, the Wolves' paint defense was not good. The perimeter defense wasn't much better. But like that Dallas game, I pointed to point of attack defense. I pointed to perimeter defense. I think you probably could have done that in the Denver game for some of the issues too. In this game, it was about protecting the paint. You can't give up 52 points. I mean, nearly half of San Antonio's points came from the paint. And there's really no excuse for that. So that's a major indictment of Rudy Gobert and how he played in this game. And look, I call a spade, right? Like I'm gonna come out and say that a week ago, I think it was last Monday's show, exactly a week ago, I did the whole show on how Rudy Gobert was the reason they beat the Raptors in the way that they did last Saturday. Now this Saturday, he was a major reason why they lost to the Spurs. Rudy did not play well, and he's not the only one. The paint defense overall was bad. Like I thought Naz was subpar in this game overall. Naz has to get more than 4 rebounds. He just does. Rudy's got to get more than 3 rebounds. Rudy ended up only playing 23 minutes in this game against the Spurs because the Wolves ended up playing a little bit smaller later in the game. But like Naz and Rudy combined to play 49 minutes, and they combined to grab 7 rebounds. That's completely unacceptable. In fact, only 2 players on the Wolves had 5 or more rebounds. They both had exactly 5, Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards. The rebounding was just not good. And it's not like there weren't rebounds to be had. The Spurs missed 29 3-point shots. They were 31% outside the arc. But all their other shots were makes at the rims. There weren't as many rebounds to be had there. That was part of it. It suppressed the number of rebounds because the Spurs were so good in the paint. They got so many opportunities at the rim that were virtually uncontested. So, like, all those things kind of work together, right? Okay. I got the Rudy point out of the way. Let's move on. I want to get a couple, talk about a couple more things. There's a positive Rudy thing I want to get to. I want to talk about the rotation, Josh Minot, talk about Nikhil. We'll talk about some Julius Randle stuff too. But I think it was the paint defense and then secondarily the rebounding that really sunk the Wolves here in this game. So we'll get on to a couple other key takeaways here. Some quick hitters next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our sponsors at BetterHelp. This month is all about gratitude. Now that we're out of scary season, we're out of October, the month of November is about being thankful and being grateful. I mean, there's a ton of people in my life I'm thankful for. Obviously, my parents, my family, my wife, my kids. I'm thankful for my wife, for a lot of things, obviously. But I mean, like specific to this podcast, like I'm on here like 6 days a week at least talking about basketball at all hours. And she's very understanding of that, and I appreciate it. Look, I guarantee there's people in your life that you're thankful for, but sometimes you can't forget to thank yourself. Sometimes it's hard to remind yourself that you're trying your best to make sense of everything, and in this crazy world, that isn't always easy to do. Just remember, send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. And look, it all plays into taking care of yourself. And one of the ways you can do that is through therapy. If you're thinking of starting therapy, consider giving BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, let's hit a couple other quick things here from the game. We talked about the interior defense. We talked about the rebounding. Let's talk about the positive Rudy thing now before we get into Minot. So something that I think has been really good to see is the chemistry that Rudy Gobert has already developed with Dante DiVincenzo. And I think it was Friday's game against Denver, and Jack and I talked about this. I think the Wolves converted 5 lobs to Rudy, and I don't think much of it was forced. I mean, there'd been a couple, the Denver game, the Dallas game. I think even the Raptors game, we saw like Nas trying to force some lobs to Rudy, some of the big stuff. That wasn't great. But on Friday, it was all very natural. It was all within the flow. It's what Denver was giving them. They were allowing them to throw, almost daring them to throw the lob. And if they could suck Jokic away from the paint, not that Jokic is a traditional rim protector, but he's the biggest body they have and is obviously a very, this is the understatement of the day, but a very heady basketball player and good at getting deflections and, basically the defensive. It's how Jokic is still a good defender because he's such a intelligent player. But they were able to execute the lobs time and time again on Friday. We only saw 1, maybe 2 against the Spurs Saturday, but it was clear that DiVincenzo has a level of chemistry and really comfort already with Rudy Gobert, even only having played with him, now 6 regular season games and in a small period of, 2 games in the preseason that they played together. It's a minor thing in this game because Rudy only played 23 minutes. He didn't play great. The Wolves, they were pretty good offensively overall, minus the 3-point shooting issues I already talked about. But it's something to keep an eye on because Dante has been basically playing point guard off the bench. I mean, he and Nikhil have been kind of splitting those minutes. But we're going to see a lot of opportunities for DiVincenzo and Rudy to play together, and it's encouraging to see that chemistry already kind of blossom between the two of them. Okay. That was a quick one. I want to hit the rotation stuff. Let's talk Josh Minot. I'd been clamoring for a while, like, hey, Minot's got to play. This team's having rebounding issues. They're having defensive issues. They're having activity level issues. I think overall the want to has been a lot better, and certainly playing Dallas and Denver will do that to you. But week 1, the Lakers game certainly, but then also even the Raptors game, which ended up being a comfortable win. But they're just like the level of urgency wasn't necessarily there. I think it was there this week. But there's still some of it. It's still not necessarily converting to success defensively. And I talked off the top about how, the defense in the bottom third of the league, which is crazy considering how good it was last year. All that to say, Minot contributes positively in all those areas. Like he's a good perimeter defender. You're not going to want him to guard like a lot of 1s, for instance, but like he's switchable. He can guard a lot of 3s and 4s and some 2s. And, this is all mostly theory because we've barely seen him play rotation minutes ever in the NBA. He didn't last year at all. 2 years ago, he did briefly, not rotation minutes, but kind of spot minutes here and there as a end of quarter stopper. And then this year, this is the first time he's gotten on the floor after a fantastic preseason and training camp. And he looked good in summer league as well. And ultimately, Minot took the Joe Ingles minutes, but played a little bit longer than Ingles had. I mean, he played 7 minutes. I don't think Ingles played more than 7 minutes in any of the first 5 games. And Ingles, of course, didn't get into this game at all. But I thought Minot looked the part. And I think I actually predicted this Friday. I said to Jack toward the end of the postcast, I wouldn't be surprised if Minot plays Saturday because that's the sort of opponent, second night of a back-to-back, young, athletic, is going to want to run the floor, size, where Minot could have some success. And sure enough, he played and played, I thought, pretty well. Missed his 2 open 3-point opportunities he had, and they were both wide open from the corner. But got to believe there was some, I don't know if it was nerves or jitters, but excitement at least, right? Like actually playing rotation minutes for a legit contending NBA team after never really having played rotation minutes before. And I thought he was good defensively. I thought he was active. He had a couple of rebounds. He took one ball. He had a straight line drive to the basket in the early 4th, and then he got taken out of the game right after that, which was a plan. They were going to make the sub. I get it. I'm not at all criticizing that, but Minot played well, and that was a good take by him. And the threes were good shots that he took. And there was he had the one turnover because he tried to throw a lob to Rudy, and he was a little out of control. And Rudy wasn't. They haven't played together at all, ever. Rudy wasn't ready for it. Rudy wasn't. That wasn't the right play there. They just want Minot to shoot the basketball. Nobody's asking Minot to be a creator at this stage for anybody else. Just when you get the opportunity, let it fly from 3, pump fake and go. Get to the basket, dunk on somebody, grab some rebounds, offensive rebounds. I was talking about the do stuff ability that he brings that they don't get elsewhere, like stocks and stuff like that. He didn't have any stocks in this game. He only played 10 minutes. But again, activity level was great. And I'm not necessarily advocating for him to play instead of Joe Ingles. I just think this should be a 10-player rotation early in the season, especially with some of these, now they're playing 3 games in 4 nights because they play again tonight. Let's give Minot some run here. And Rudy only ended up playing 23 minutes in this game, and Conley only played 21. But I don't know exactly what this should look like. I don't know exactly what minutes he's taking, if he's fully taking Ingles minutes plus some others. It's hard to argue that he takes minutes from Nas or takes minutes from Nikhil, and we'll talk more about Alexander Walker here in a minute. But maybe if it's a night where Randle's not giving you anything defensively, we'll talk about that too. Now, Randle was great offensively in this game, but if the effort's not there defensively from Ant or Randle, maybe those are minutes that could go to Minot. And I'm not saying a punishment, but just somebody who's going to give you that effort. And Josh Minot's going to do exactly that. So that would be something to look at here moving forward. Quickly on Julius Randle. He was awesome offensively in this game. He did miss all 3 of his 3-point attempts, which I think 2 of the 3 were good shots, if I remember right. In the flow, mostly open, etc. Got to the line 6 times, shot 8 of 15. If he's going to shoot over 50% and drop 21, that's great. The defense was not good. It was really not good, and it's mostly been not good through his 6 games in a Wolves uniform. So that's something to keep an eye on, and it was spotty with the Knicks. I had an impression of him as a bad defender. Talking to Alex Wolf a few weeks ago after the trade, Alex Wolf, one of the hosts of Locked On Knicks, he talked about Randle actually being a pretty good on-ball defender and his physicality, and certainly he showed brief flashes of that, and I thought there were moments he was okay against Jokic on Friday. But the consistency is not there. Certainly transition defense, that is not, that's not good. That's not been there. So there's a lot that's kind of a lot to be desired to this point from Julius Randle's defense. And it's so much of it is effort level, right? He's not, that's the biggest thing. And that's where Cat was so good last year. We saw the effort level wane at times, in schemes in the past when he was in drop coverage and he just kind of struggled with it, or he was being asked to rim protect and he would do the thing I always ripped on. And I'm talking 3+ years ago now, where Cat would be a step late, but he would pretend like he was going to block the shot and just to kind of put the effort out there, but it wasn't a real effort. That was gone the last couple of years from Cat. Cat was awesome for the most part defensively, not being a traditional rim protector, just putting forth the effort, playing at the level, blitzing the ball at times, switching on the perimeter, all those things, getting into a stance, getting into guys, being physical. We're not seeing that consistently enough on defense from Julius Randle. Now, offense, he's been great. He is being physical, appropriately physical, better than Karl-Anthony Towns was in terms of controlling his body. I think I believe Randle's only had one offensive foul in 6 games, maybe 2, which, I mean, like, that would be a dream for Karl-Anthony Towns. I guess I don't know that now that he's with the Knicks, what the offensive foul rate looks like for Cat. If he suddenly became more mature when he started playing in New York, we will see. But all that to say, Randle's been great offensively. He's got to bring the same effort and physicality to the defensive end of the floor. That's my biggest call out there. All right. I want to hit studs and duds. Let's see. Oh, I want to talk about Nickeil. I guess that'll be part of studs and duds here. And that's how we'll close the show today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page that you place your bets. Hopefully you had fun with football on Sunday, NFL Sunday. Of course, there's a game tonight, just one this week on Monday, one on Thursday, and then there is a Germany game on Sunday. So, football all day next Sunday. Also, win total updates at FanDuel. Check out where the Wolves are now after going 3-3 in their first almost 2 weeks of play. Hopefully, it'll be 4-3 after tonight against Charlotte. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's talk studs and duds. I think we'll talk about Nickeil as part of this. Yeah, let's do that. No, let's hit Nickeil first because I can't give him a stud. Like, he missed all his 3-point attempt, but I thought he played really well. I'm not going to give him a stud in this game. You know what? I take that back. Who else is going to get studs in this game? He is a stud. Let's start there. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was not the best player on the floor in this game. He was 0 for 4 outside the arc, but he was 3 for 3 on 2-point attempts, had an and one opportunity, missed the free throw, but and one opportunity, 6 assists. He led the Wolves in assists, had twice as many assists as anyone else on the Wolves. Conley had 3 assists. Nickeil had 6. He had a block defensively. He had 3 rebounds in 24 minutes, which, hey, that's the same number of rebounds that Rudy Gobert had in 23 minutes, and it's only one less than Reid had in 26 minutes. The activity level, like, it goes back to the Josh Minot point. Nickeil Alexander-Walker's activity level is fantastic. That's pretty much always been the case. We saw it last year in the playoffs. He was so good against Phoenix, was decent against Denver, especially early in that series, the famous locking down of Jamal Murray over the first couple of games. I guess game 2 is the big one. So those were big moments for Nickeil. Struggled in the Dallas series, struggled to shoot the ball in rounds 2 and 3, but the defense and the effort level were still there and has been awesome through 6 games this year. Probably one of the best 3 Wolves players overall. Like, seriously, I know the volume's not there, so it's not like he's contributing a ton of points. But 6.6 assists in 24 minutes from Nickeil, you'll take that. Plus, again, the activity level, and him and DiVincenzo have basically been splitting. Not basically, they've been splitting backup point guard minutes, and he's been great. It's hard to overstate just how good Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been through 6 games. And Jack and I talked about this on Friday. Jack mentioned the contract situation. Like, he's a bargain. He's making like a little over $4 million this year. And yes, after the Cat trade, it's feasible the Wolves could retain Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but they've also got to deal with the Nas contract if and when he opts out, and same with Julius Randle. So, like, are you going to keep 2 of the 3? Is Nickeil one of those 2 that you keep? Quite possibly, yes. But also, like, at this point, I'd say it's about 60-40 that he walks in the offseason, because somebody's going to have a lot of money to give him as a legit 3-and-D guy, role player on a championship caliber team. So, Nickeil's been great, and it is a contract year for him too. Like, but the point Jack was making with that on Friday was he's not trying to play. He's staying within himself. He's not trying to be a superhero out there thinking, I got to get mine. I got to score 12 points off the bench tonight because I need a big contract next summer. Like, that's clearly not where his mindset is at, nor has it ever seemed to be that way with Nickeil. He seems to have a great head on his shoulders, and he said a lot of great things about his focus now, and he used to put some of the same sort of pressure on himself early in his career as a first round pick, but now he knows he's got a role and he's going to execute that role. He's going to do just fine on the open market next summer. All right, so Nikhil's a stud in this game. I'm going to give one to, man, it's tough. Like, nobody really played all that well for the Wolves. I'm going to give one to Josh Minot. Like, what the heck? He only played 10 minutes, but he was great. He looked really good. We talked about him already. Don't want to spend a ton more time on him. He's a +7 in 10 minutes, 4 points, 2 boards. Missed his only 2 3-point shots, but again, they were good shots. One of them rattled in and out. Like, he's fine. The third one, I don't know. I almost have to go with, I could go with Julius, but he was so bad defensively. I'll go with Dante DiVincenzo for the third stud. He had 14 points on 5 of 7 shooting, 3 of 5 outside the arc. In this game for DiVincenzo, 2 assists. So DiVincenzo and Alexander Walker combined for 8 assists and 3 turnovers in this game off the bench. They were not problems for the Wolves. The Wolves bench unit overall was decent. I talked a little bit about Naz. Naz isn't going to get a dud, but he's not a stud in this game. He scored okay. I think picked his spots okay. Defensively not good. Like, he and Randle were both not good defensively. I complained about the rebounding from Randle, Gobert, Naz. That's all valid. And again, a reason to play Josh Minot more. I don't think Chris Finch is ever going to pull the trigger on saying, like, hey, you guys can't rebound, I'm going to play Luka Garza. I don't think that's going to happen unless guys are out. And they're not going to hesitate to use Garza if Gobert rests a game. They're not afraid to do that. But I don't think they're going to say you're going to play instead of Naz. Like, I just don't see them doing that. And I'm not advocating, I'm not saying they should, but I would be really surprised if Chris Finch ended up going that route at any point. Duds, I got to give one to Ant. Like, I know that he shot the ball okay, 8 of 17. Again, just 2 of 4 at the line, though. 5 rebounds, led the team, weirdly enough, in 36 minutes, but he only had 2 assists and he had 3 turnovers in this game. He was a -20 in a game they lost by 10. I thought early he looked okay, but then just kind of faded and disappeared middle portions of the game. The shot selection was not there. He only attempted 7 threes, but of the 10 twos, like, there weren't very many at the rim. He only got to the line for 4 free throws, and I don't think there's maybe one in there. He should have gotten a whistle, but like, I don't think he was being treated unfairly by the refs in this game. I thought it was decently officiated. So just not a great game from Ant. We already talked about Rudy. I'd give him a dud as well. So those would be my 2 duds, are Rudy and Ant, 2 of the Wolves' 3 best players, and they've just got to get more out of those guys. There's really no other way to slice that. All right, next up, the Wolves have the Charlotte Hornets on Monday night at Target Center. Should be a get-right situation. Now, they're not like on a long losing streak, but they've lost 2 out of 3. Clearly, the Wolves have been in every game so far this season. Like, it's not like they're in a terrible spot. And the schedule really lightens up here. They get Charlotte at home, then they get 2 days off at Chicago with a 1-game road trip. Back home, second night of a back-to-back, though, is Friday against Portland. Obviously a winnable game. You get a little more than 24 hours between games. That's an 8 p.m. tip. And then home for Miami on Sunday before you get consecutive and actually back-to-back games at Portland. Then you go at Sacramento, home for Phoenix, at Toronto, at Boston. So it gets tougher there, pretty quickly. But for your next 6 games, to have 3 against Portland, albeit 2 on the second night of back-to-backs, 1 against Chicago, 1 against Charlotte, and then the Miami game right there in the middle. That's not bad. Like, it'd be real nice to go 6-0 or 5-1 in that stretch. You go 5-1, you're 8-4, headed into an at Sacramento, home for Phoenix situation there, November 15th and 17th. So I think 5-1 is realistic for that stretch. So keep an eye on the rotation. Tuesday, like that to me is the other thing, is like, is this going to ever expand to a true 10-man rotation? We'll see. And if there's ever going to be a time, like 2 back-to-backs here in the next couple weeks, a couple games against Portland, like that feels like the right time to give Minot, Ingles, maybe even Dillingham or Shannon some run. I should mention Dillingham and Shannon both got their first minutes last night. Neither one of them scored, but Dillingham had a couple of assists, so it was good to get those guys out there and get their feet wet a little bit, even if it was garbage time. But also, cool, by the way, that Dillingham got to play against Chris Paul in his NBA debut, because Chris Paul is still on the floor. So that's cool for him. All right, so Tuesday's show will be the post-game pod from Monday night against Charlotte. We'll have Wednesday and Thursday to kind of take stock of where the Wolves are at, hopefully 4-3, but dig into some of these other things we talked about today, specific to the Spurs game, but bigger picture stuff about the offense and the defense. So we'll do that Wednesday. Thursday, we'll get you ready for the Bulls game. We haven't seen the Bulls in forever, so we'll talk a bit about their offseason and what to expect in that one. So big week ahead. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. A reminder, you can sign up for the Locked On Wolves newsletter, a daily newsletter. It's one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free right now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Wolves newsletter. A reminder, there's some great national articles and content in there, so definitely subscribe to that and check it out. A reminder that the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.